I used to lie awake at night, beside the man who once meant everything to me. Now nothing more than a cold, distant shadow. I ached for something, a glance, a touch, a spark that would remind me I was still alive, still desired. And then he looked at me, not my husband, but someone I was never supposed to think of that way. Just one fleeting brush of his fingers and suddenly my entire body ignited. It wasn't love. It wasn't even lust. It was a craving, wild, forbidden, and dangerously alive. But the most terrifying part? It wasn't that I let it happen. Just that deep down, I wanted it to happen again. This isn't just a story. It's an obsession. And it started the moment I let the silence break. Loneliness took me by surprise, guiding me into an unexpected and uncharted territory that I was utterly unprepared to face. My marriage had grown cold, the warmth that once enveloped us now a distant memory. My husband, perpetually occupied and emotionally unreachable, made me feel more like a mere roommate than a cherished wife. The nights stretched on, hollow and silent, conversations droned on like a monotonous echo, and intimacy faded into a haunting reminiscence. I convinced myself it was just a part of the routine, a natural progression after so many years, yet beneath the surface, a desperate longing stirred within me, an aching need for attention, for passion, for something to reignite the fire and remind me that I was still truly alive. Then there was him, my stepson, exuding confidence, keenly observant, and far more perceptive than I had ever imagined. Initially, it seemed innocent, just brief glances, ephemeral moments that ignited a spark within me, a feeling of being noticed in a way my husband had long since forgotten. I pushed it aside, desperately trying to persuade myself that it was merely a figment of my imagination. Yet, the harder I fought to push it away, the more it loomed over me, demanding my attention. The intensity of his gaze, lingering just a heartbeat longer than necessary. His presence lingered in the shadows, an ever-watchful eye, as if he were poised on the brink of an unsaid revelation. One evening, following yet another suffocatingly silent dinner with my husband, I withdrew to my room, the weight of unspoken words heavy in the air. The loneliness had morphed into an agonizing weight, pressing down with relentless force. Desperation clawed at me, urging me to find a fleeting refuge, if only for a heartbeat. The house lay in an unsettling silence, my husband retreating to bed early while I was left to ponder the whereabouts of my stepson, likely ensnared in the depths of his own mysterious realm. My hands roamed restlessly, desperate for an escape from the mounting frustration that churned within me. My breath quickened, my mind clouded, engulfed by the overwhelming rush of finally experiencing something profound. In that fleeting instant, I was utterly consumed, oblivious to the ominous creak of the door as it slowly opened behind me. By the moment I understood, the opportunity had slipped away, leaving only the weight of regret. I stood paralyzed. My stepson stood there, his expression a mask of uncertainty, leaving the air thick with unspoken words. Stunned disbelief? Unrestrained laughter? Is there something more lurking beneath the surface? The silence between us hung heavy, a palpable weight that threatened to suffocate. My heart raced with an intensity that felt almost unbearable. A tumultuous blend of fear and a sinister force coiling within me. Panic surged through me as I desperately tried to shield myself, but it was too late. The harm had already been inflicted. He had witnessed it all. The air was thick with tension and unvoiced understanding crackling between us, heavy with unexpressed emotions. He remained still, his gaze unwavering. My voice trembled, barely escaping my lips. This is not your place. He tilted his head slightly, his lips curling into a semblance of a smile, yet it held an unsettling ambiguity. I never intended to break the moment. His tone was unsettlingly calm, a stark contrast to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Unsettlingly serene. The response caught me completely off guard. Neither shame nor discomfort. Something more calculated, intentional. A shiver ran down my spine. Go, I urged, my voice barely a breath, uncertain if I truly wanted it. He paused, his gaze locked onto mine, a storm of uncertainty brewing between us. With a heavy heart, he turned away, the door creaking shut with a finality that echoed in the silence. I sat there, gasping for air, my heart racing wildly in my ears. What had just transpired? And why, in the face of such utter humiliation, did a forbidden thrill surge within me? Shame should have consumed me entirely. Yet, I found myself wide awake for hours, trapped in a relentless loop, reliving that moment again and again, my body still throbbing from the unresolved tension that lingered in the air. The following morning, I steered clear of him, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. Every time I dared to glance his way, a wave of heat surged to my cheeks, overwhelming me with an intensity one couldn't escape. My husband sat across from me at breakfast, his eyes glued to his phone, utterly unaware of the storm brewing between us. If he only knew the truth of that fateful night, the horrors his son had witnessed, it would shatter everything he held dear. I fixated on my coffee, desperately trying to calm the storm brewing within me. Yet, I could sense his gaze piercing through me. He was not evading my presence. His gaze was now fixed on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Each fleeting glance, each subtle shift in his chair, carried an unmistakable weight. He was pushing my limits, observing intently to gauge my response. "Is everything all right?" My husband's voice shattered the silence, cutting through the palpable unease that hung in the air. I struggled to maintain a smile. I barely slept at all last night. My stepson released a soft chuckle, a sound so faint yet potent it sent a chilling tremor coursing through me. He was aware. He was fully aware of his intentions, every calculated move steeped in purpose. Throughout the day, I fought to maintain my distance. Yet it felt utterly unattainable. He lingered in the shadows, always just a breath away, his presence electrifying as our bodies brushed in the narrow hallway. Unintended but deliberate. The atmosphere surrounding us was thick with an unspoken peril, a tension that hung heavily in the silence, palpable and undeniable, binding us in a shared awareness that neither dared to voice. That night, as I meticulously cleaned up in the kitchen, he stood against the counter, his gaze fixed on me, an unspoken weight hanging in the air. I feigned indifference, yet my hands shook uncontrollably as I washed the dishes. "You don't have to act so nervous," he said, his voice dripping with an unsettling calmness. I hesitated, a chilling moment gripping me, before I willed myself to push forward. "I have no idea what you're referring to." His smirk grew more pronounced, a shadow of something darker lurking beneath. In the depths of the night, my breath hitched in my throat. I turned to face him, struggling to maintain a facade of calm, but the intensity in his gaze shattered my resolve. He stood there, unflinching, as the weight of the moment hung in the air around him. He stood resolute, unyielding in the face of judgment. He felt a stirring curiosity deep within him. I felt a lump form in my throat. That was a grave error. He edged forward, the air thick with unspoken words. Could it truly have been? Text. I should have ended it right then and there. I should have stopped whatever was unfolding before it consumed everything in its path. Yet I chose not to. I remained frozen, allowing the weight of the moment to intensify, his words hanging heavily in the air around us. He reached past me, his hand brushing against my arm as he seized a glass from the cabinet, the air thick with unspoken tension. It was the faintest brush, yet it ignited a surge of electricity that coursed through every fiber of my being. I tightened my grip, knuckles white with intensity. It's impossible." He remained rooted in place. "So, what's stopping you from turning your back and leaving?" The silence hung heavy, a void where answers should have been. In truth, I found myself unwilling to take that step. For the first time in years, a spark ignited within me. I felt truly seen, desperately wanted, and that filled me with dread. Just as I was about to speak, my husband's voice suddenly pierced through the silence from the other room. "Babe, are you coming to bed? It's getting late, and I can't help but feel the weight of the night pressing in around us." The weight of reality bore down upon me, shattering the fragile illusions I clung to. I took a step back, creating a chasm of separation between us. My stepson just watched me, his eyes brimming with an emotion that was impossible to decipher. I turned and walked away, yet his gaze lingered, searing into my back, haunting me long after I had disappeared from sight. The following days dragged on, each moment more excruciating than the last. Each second spent in his presence was charged with an impending explosion of emotions. He maintained an unsettling calm, his demeanor betraying nothing of the turmoil beneath the surface. He was undeniably bolder, each action steeped in a deliberate intensity that left an undeniable mark. My husband, oblivious and consumed by his work, left me exposed to the very temptation I fought so desperately to withstand. One fateful evening, my husband revealed that he would be leaving town for a few days. I nodded, masking the turmoil brewing within me. But the moment he stepped out, an undeniable change swept through the atmosphere. My stepson was aware of it as well. All obstacles had vanished, leaving no room for justification. That night, I sank into the couch, feigning interest in the flickering screen, yet my mind was a tempest, far from the unfolding drama before me. The sound of his footsteps echoed ominously as he entered the room, and the intensity of his gaze pressed down on me like a heavy shroud. He avoided sitting across from me this time, a shift that sent a chill through the air. He sat right next to me, uncomfortably close, the air thick with unspoken words. I felt the tension rise within me, yet I remained rooted in place. Still pretending nothing's happening? He inquired, his voice dripping with a smooth, almost mocking allure. I released a deep, measured breath. This is no mere game. He leaned in, the air thick with unspoken words, his arm grazing mine in a fleeting moment that sent a jolt through me. Then fell silent. I could have escaped, could have turned my back before the darkness closed in, but I stayed. I remained ensnared in the perilous gravity that bound us together. His fingers grazed the side of my hand, a whisper of contact that ignited a storm of shivers racing up my spine. I turned to face him, and an unbearable silence hung between us, thick with unspoken words. The air crackled with an unbearable intensity, the distance between us diminishing with each heartbeat. "This is wrong," I breathed, my voice barely escaping my lips. His gaze deepened with intensity. "So, what drives your desire for it?" Silence enveloped me, leaving an aching void where certainty should have been. My body turned against me, leaving my mind scrambling to comprehend the betrayal. As his hand inched toward my thigh, all my reasons for resisting evaporated into thin air. It was a dangerous gamble, shrouded in secrecy. Yet, in that moment, I had never felt more alive. I yielded to the magnetic force, to the blaze that had been quietly raging between us for far too long. Every touch sparked a fire within me, awakening emotions I thought were long forgotten. It transcended mere desire. It was about the desperate yearning to be desired. A sense of recognition washes over me, a feeling I thought I had lost to time. In that fleeting moment, a voice within me erupted, demanding that I halt. Yet, that voice faded into oblivion, overshadowed by the intensity of his gaze, the profound emotions he stirred within me. Lines blurred, boundaries shattered, and by the time I grasped the extent of our descent, retreat was no longer an option. Hours later, as I lay there, my gaze fixed on the ceiling, the weight of reality bore down upon me with an unforgiving force. The gravity of the recent events crashed down upon me, a mix of suffocation and exhilaration swirling within. I had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Yet, what filled me with dread was not the regret itself. It was the undeniable truth that I felt no remorse whatsoever. The dawn broke with an unsettling haste. I awoke ensnared in unfamiliar sheets, the heavy burden of reality crashing down upon me. My body still recalled each electrifying touch, every breathless whisper that lingered in the air. Yet my thoughts were already descending into chaos. What have I done? I turned to look at him, still lost in slumber, his expression a haunting mix of tranquility and vulnerability. He stood resolute, unyielding in his conviction, a silent storm brewing within him, untouched by the weight of remorse. I felt a deep pang of envy for that. My heart raced violently as I slipped out of bed, clutching my clothes with trembling hands, every sound amplified in the stillness. Each action weighed heavily on my conscience, a profound betrayal not only to my husband but to the very existence I believed was mine. As I stepped out, the guilt crashed over me like a relentless tidal wave. Yet, hidden beneath the surface lay something far more profound. An irresistible thrill that consumed me. Last night, a surge of vitality coursed through me like never before. I struggled to maintain my composure, yet he remained anything but ordinary. At breakfast, he was a shadow of himself, unyielding, consumed by an overwhelming need to control. His gaze bore into me, igniting a fire within that quickened my heartbeat. He was not merely a blunder I could wipe away. He was aware of it, and he craved for me to grasp that truth as well. My husband called later that morning, his voice slicing through the haze and yanking me back to the stark reality I was trying to escape. He spoke of his journey, of his job, of every detail, yet he avoided the one truth that shattered him. His wife had betrayed him in the most devastating manner. I compelled myself to reply, masking the turmoil within, yet the truth loomed heavy. Everything had shifted. As I ended the call, I caught sight of my stepson, his figure silhouetted against the doorframe, a silent presence that filled the room with an unspoken tension. His smirk pierced through the air, sending a shiver racing down my spine. "You're overthinking this," he said, his voice laced with urgency. I crossed my arms, a barrier rising between us, thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. In the face of the madness, he merely shrugged, a flicker of disbelief crossing his features. Perhaps. Yet it unfolded. I swallowed with great difficulty. It must never happen again. He moved in closer, the air thick with unspoken words. Are you really certain about that? I was not. That was the heart of the matter. I longed to utter the word yes, to bring closure before everything unraveled beyond control. Yet deep down, I understood my own nature all too clearly. The line had been irrevocably crossed, leaving no path to retreat. Throughout the day, I steered clear of him, yet it felt utterly futile. The damage had been irrevocably inflicted. With each flutter of my eyelids, his hands seemed to linger, an unsettling presence that sent shivers down my spine. Each time he passed, my body betrayed me, responding instinctively before my mind could intervene. That fateful night, my husband returned home. He pressed his lips against mine, his voice thick with longing as he whispered that he had missed me. I masked my true feelings with a strained smile, embodying the role of the devoted wife. Yet my stepson lingered in the shadows, his gaze piercing through the air, harboring a secret that bound us in an unspoken pact. I stood at a crossroads, faced with two choices that could alter everything. Act as if nothing has transpired, while carrying the heavy burden of this treachery. Or surrender once more, fully aware that it would shatter everything. As my husband enveloped me in his embrace, an unsettling void consumed me. Devoid of spark, stripped of warmth. As my stepson brushed past me, his fingers fleetingly grazing my skin, a sharp intake of breath caught in my throat. My decision was final. I found myself grappling with the truth, unable to confront it just yet.